Audio's good.
Excellent.
Audio's good.
We're all rolling there.
Sounds good. All right, so here we go.
Here we are.
This is talking about something that it may not be that technical, but it turned out to be technical.
I'll make it technical.
And you'll make it technical. He'll make it technical. And
That's not the point.
Well, I'm just gonna say that at this point, for me, everything is technical. Society, technology, digital, analog. It's a big blur.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
So
that's it.
we're living with it. We don't understand sometimes, or when I even accept it, we are living with it, and we still draw a line between what is the real world, and for those listening to the podcast, I just did the air quote, and the digital world, which happens to be real as well. That's where we live our life. So
That's right.
and not only our life, now our death.
Our death, that's right.
So that's kind of like what we're going to talk about here today, Sean. It's going to be interesting.
I know. So we're here at Australia CyberCon, hosted by ASA, and we're in Melbourne. Lots of great folks, lots of great topics. This one caught our attention, and Peter Gigengack, good to see you. You're speaking here at the conference. A few things, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, got a few things that are on, and obviously this one's really quite a dear one to me, talking about digital identities after death.
Yeah? So a little bit about yourself to start with. What do you do?
Yeah, to start off, my role, I am a Director of CyberSecurity in Western Australia's Office of Digital Government. I look after, capability and uplift of cybersecurity maturity across WA, and so I guess my role is to drive, programs of work, initiatives that would help raise cybersecurity maturity, everything from penetration testing, cybersecurity awareness training, and actually implementation support. And so I guess my journey as a recovering sysadmin, spent a lot of time on the tools. Really, like for this story that we're talking about today, I had to leverage some of those, tools and kind of processes to apply in a way that I wasn't anticipating.
Yeah, and what did trigger you to actually dive deep into this, like thinking hard about this topic?
As about presenting for this topic, or?
No, kind of like, one day you said, this is going to happen. Not to a lot of people.
Well, it actually, I wasn't probably thinking about it, and I think this is the key talking point about why I took this opportunity to try and present. So we had a situation where one of our elderly family relatives passed away, and look, as we know, when people pass away, we've got the cleanup of all of their physical assets and execution of wills, and there's a lot of pieces that have to occur for the family, and it's already a challenge.
Yeah.
And so as people are kind of losing their loved ones, all those memories come back, and it's quite an emotional piece at time. Our family was caught in a situation where we had this elderly relative that we'll just call him John for the sake of today. John, look, he was elderly, and we had, concerns around his online activities before he passed away, but really his, let's just say, his personality just meant he wasn't open to it, and so he kind of locked it away a bit. Now, he eventually did pass away, and as a family, as we were, going through the physical stuff, we went through it obviously trying to understand some of that digital piece, not to kind of dive in like reading someone's journal, but going, well, look, we wanted to obviously understand, look, over the course of his life, he'd taken photos of the family. He's obviously transacted with a bunch of people that we believed at the time, had suspicions around that he was getting some form of scam. He was elderly, he was quite vulnerable in his life, and we knew that we had pretty good suspicions that he was being, scammed in some way, and we
taken advantage
of. And in this situation, we knew that he was in conversation with someone international, saying, "Hey, I want to come to Australia." Obviously, his generous nature was always going, "Oh, I want to make sure this person comes here." And we were really trying to, as a family, really just kind of go, well, we knew something was happening, and And like we knew that like finances over time, it hadn't been really there. And so in the absence of it, we kind of all went, let's I guess pull apart a little bit of that digital footprint and try to unravel that. The key thing that was a challenge was we had nothing to go with. We had we had computers, we had tablets, and we just didn't have anything to start with. And so it started off with a bit of a journey going, well, I've got a computer, I've got no passwords. Where do you start? And so me coming from that, I guess, highly IT technology, technical experience, thought, okay, look, if I've got enough experience, if I need to break into a computer, I know how to extract out what I need to. And look, I've been in cyber about 2 and a bit years. I am definitely not a digital forensics expert. We almost went down that journey where we might have had to do that. Fortunately, thinking about an elderly person, they weren't as sophisticated as I would be as a technologist. So like they're like logging onto their computer. Yes, we didn't have passwords, but when we carved it back, the log on was their initials. Their password was also their initials. Had to kind of decomplicate it a bit. And eventually we were able to log in, and I guess then from there it was really a discovery going, well, knowing that I guess we believe that they were, I guess, wrapped up in that scenario, going, well, could we understand, like, were there any finances still committed or going out, to make sure we didn't have any other kind of like direct debits or things that were authorised against an account that would obviously leave the finances for the family and then leave us with surprises like.
So you had a reason, right?
Yeah.
You had a motive here to do this.
Yeah, that's right.
But I feel like there is many other situation all around the world that are facing the same thing that you've been facing.
Correct.
And maybe there been other reason. Maybe somebody's in control more of the family assets and so from a legal perspective, how does that work?
Ooh. Now look, I will put my hat on. I am not a legal.
From what you learned by doing that.
And look, I guess as part of the process, like look, the people that were charged with the, I guess, execution of the will and had that were basically the people that were instructing me to, I guess, work with that. Now they were the family relative, and that kind of then went, I guess nothing's worse than kind of having to troll through someone's journal and understand that. But we had a good reason to look at this, to go through and go, well, look, let's even just try and get some more memories back from this person, like photos. And yeah, that scenario was very, very real to us that we wanted to do that. Now, from a legal piece, I'd have to say we probably didn't check a lot of boxes on that. Like, were we allowed to do that? But I guess as a family, I guess having that transfer of assets to us, we were, I guess, in a way, in charge of those.
How about from a service provider perspective? So I'm assuming some of the photos may have been in a cloud backup service or something like that. Were the providers working with you, or?
Well, we didn't go down that avenue.
No.
Fortunately, once we were logged into his machine, we were able to at least go through and go, well, okay, let's look locally. What have we got? Not a lot. Let's go through and look. I guess the worst part was going, well, let's go understand what the browsing history and like the web-based emails and web-based cloud services, social media, etc. But again, some of those we still didn't have credentials. We didn't know what they actually had. And because I suppose that nature where they weren't as transparent with the family, we knew that they had multiple Facebook identities or similar. And so trying to map that out was coming with nothing to start off with. We had to kind of just step through logically, like, oh, well, what have we got? Let's map it out. And I guess part of that was having to go through like email trails of to try and discover, okay, do we have things that to try and identify the accounts and I guess piece that digital footprint together. And that was probably, because that was obviously intermixed with some of those conversations with that person, we believe that was, I guess, taking advantage of them. It became quite confronting.
Right. So I know, and then I'm curious to know that maybe what happened, right? But before we get there, I'm thinking like nowadays there is, you go on Facebook, on other social media, you can actually attribute the like a legacy account to someone else.
You could, yes.
Right? So I guess this wasn't the case.
Before one becomes a legacy.
Before it becomes a legacy.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're writing your own will in a way and say, well, I'm going to leave my social media life in the hands of someone else.
And I think the technology companies are actually kind of getting into tune of this around that. Effectively, it's a life cycle of those identities and enabling, or do we just close it off? Or in the case, do we memorialize someone's profile so then people can leave memories or kind of revisit
right,
them?
you have options.
Yeah, there's a bunch of options there, I think, now that a lot more that weren't there probably when they first started, and as I suppose people are kind of getting embedding their lives in it, they're now starting to unlock a bit of that. And I guess we got regulations like GDPR, which are really focused on that citizen privacy, and obviously now that's kind of enabled people's ability to delete themselves offline from platforms as well. So at least now the technology players are all kind of catching up to that. But I guess the piece that was missing also was going, well, this person hadn't left any clear instructions as well. Like, what would you want us to do? Same thing if you're at a funeral and you wanted them to read out a special piece that would inspire the family or similar.
Right.
There was no instructions, and so I guess for us it was left to discover first what we had, and then go, well, what actions do we want to take after that as a family, and step through that.
Right. So, Sean, do you have anything? Because I'm going philosophical here. So.
I'm just thinking. I mean, I'm all which I want you to do as well. But I'm just thinking, not directly related to your experience and your story, but when I think about identities, I think about business.
Yeah,
because that's where I spend a lot of time. And there's an IT person who helps manage the identity across a number of things for
the organization,
and the devices and the so on and so forth. We take that on ourselves.
We do
in our personal lives, and it's enough to just keep track of it ourselves, let alone how we want things to. I mean, IT departments have onboarding, usage,
should hopefully have offboarding
and offboarding. Exactly.
That's right.
So all the stuff in between, this role, that role, these rights, those rights. A lot of that doesn't happen for us. We have to do that for ourselves.
It's our own responsibility, yeah.
And kind of to Marco's point, you might find some services that offer capabilities to memorialize or what have you. Many don't. I personally lock everything down as best I can.
Yeah.
Not because I'm private to my family necessarily, but I'm private to the rest of the world.
Correct.
But I'd want my family, I have nothing to hide, so I'd want my family to have access to the photos and the accounts, bank accounts and things like that, which I've put in the wills, or the will. But there's no real easy way to technically, digitally handle that.
And look, I guess as cybersecurity professionals, we are in that odds where we're trying to manage risk. We're trying to, obviously, a lot of the time we're operating on behalf of, as you say, the organisation, trying to protect from adversaries. Now, a family member, hopefully they're not an adversary.
Right.
There are certain circumstances where obviously that people get into those unfortunate circumstances, but in general, hopefully you've got a good relationship with your family, that they're not seen as adversarial, and they could be empowered to, I guess, take those next steps after you pass away. So it is a real kind of, even on my own, after going through this experience, trying to go, well, how do I balance that? Because I'm like, well, I'll be just trying to crank up all the security, and I'm like, well, my family are far less technically capable to go through that process. And look, the irony is that within our professional lives, we'd be looking at things like a disaster recovery plan or a business continuity plan, and we're very deliberate, and we kind of get raked over the coals saying, oh, we don't have one, we've got to have all emergency access to these credentials if we have an incident. And I think hopefully, like this presentation I'm trying to go through with ASA is really trying to help explore people practical steps. They can then go, well, how about you make sure you think about it in that way. Now, the unfortunate part, if you pass away, there's no disaster recovery plan for that, but like in the end, if you can leave at least the pieces that would help your family not also have to kind of struggle through going, I'd have to go through a whole lengthy process of mapping accounts, resetting passwords. and kind of unpicking that as well, in a way, like did feel a little bit like kind of going through someone's diary or something like in a physical sense. And so like as you're going through those conversations or emails in there to try and discover what was there, well, you go, well, like I'm being exposed to things that I kind of counter to wanting what I wanted to achieve. Obviously, I want to remember my family member as that loving person, the person that we have great memories about, and we don't want any of that kind of process to kind of be tarnished by, well, I've had to dig through this to understand behaviours and activities that we thought were being exploited. And at the end of the day, like we did map out, I guess, some of the conversations, and like I won't go into those details, but like look, we did try to identify, well, were there persistent pain or like sending money, and like look, it was really difficult to even like understand that. Maybe they did some of this offline, I don't know. But like in this sense, it was really just kind of that, I guess, process that we didn't want to or didn't need while we're trying to grieve as a family.
Right.
And so hopefully this presentation and this theme and raising awareness really just kind of gets the conversations going, well, what could I do? Now look, even as I was kind of doing research and I guess trying to prepare myself as best I could for this speech, not just from my own personal journey, but going, well, let's look at some of the other aspects. And so like some of that research, I think there's a law society in Australia, they said only about 7% of people are actually factoring this into their wills. Now the other part, now look, within Australia we've got multiple states and territories, each their own jurisdiction. They've actually got different processes for wills as well, and so like even like advice I could give you to one person may not be consistent with another. And so really it's about kind of doing a bit of due diligence around going, well, let's go speak to a lawyer that can actually go through and go, well, let's make sure we capture these. So when we get to that spot, well, your family's not stuck. Right. They can go through and go, well, look, if I need to get to the accounts, here is how you do it. And look, I've seen really good examples, not from this group, but other family members or family friends that have gone through that same journey. And the process for them was so much more, I guess, seamless. And they just went, here's the accounts, here's our accounts, this is how I'd reset. I'll log in, like I've got my phone if you need to do a password reset with multi-factor authentication, MFA to get in. And it was really logically laid, and from the having to not have to go through that process is really, for them, made it a bit more of a simple process to go while they're navigating that challenge. Yeah. And so like having both sides, understanding where it's been a bit rough versus going, look, here's one that's actually done it really well, and they were set up for success for the family and they could navigate that a bit more seamlessly. Yeah. Quite an interesting kind of comparison.
I think this is a starting point. Like it's a conversation started, but also for me that I'm normally just starting to think from an ethical, philosophical perspective, like, you know, how life keep going in the digital world, as I said at the beginning. But then, you know, if we were not in this digital era, somebody passed, of course, like many other time, and you really don't know where this guy was handling his business. Correct. Right? Somebody's done and is done unless somebody comes out and say, hey, I used to do business with your grandfather or whatever that was. But and then maybe you hire an investigator and you go to look in the bank, whatever it is. But now our life is so, you know, memorized. Correct. It's in the digital, almost like forever, as we know, right? I mean, the database is there. You can delete your account, but it's probably still in a backup somewhere.
And look, like most, if you were to pass away today, your accounts would keep perpetually running until someone was notified of that, right?
Yeah, and I think from a societal perspective, where I'm going, and I'd love to know from you, what have you learned from a human level, like perspective? It's kind of like, so do we let the deceased respect the decision that they had, either they left the will or didn't left the will? Do they want to have a digitalized version of themselves transferring an AI? I know I'm going way over what you did, but I mean, these are the questions that we need to start asking ourselves as a society, where we could potentially live forever
That's right.
Not Highlander, but
like, look, we could be training some large language model. Who knows?
exactly.
And look, I've even had some people like engaging me once they saw this topic pop up, saying, "Oh, what about like again, as you kind of suggested, living on through AI or." And look, even through a bunch of the research I was doing, and look, I'm not covering this topic in my presentation, but going, look.
Well, but it will
kind of
get it going.
We'll get it going, right? Where people have had interactions with their deceased relatives well beyond they've passed away, because maybe it's account takeovers or similar. And obviously, could you imagine like your family member passed away many years ago speaking to you? It's a real, you'd be kind of like quite unnerving going, well, hang on, who is this?
MySpace what?
MySpace what? That's right. And so like, look, it's a real, I came up, even through the research, which I didn't cover in this, prepare for in the presentation, I found like some really creepy stories of this actually already occurring. Now look, is that because someone didn't do that housekeeping towards the end? I will never know, but like I suppose it kind of puts it out saying, look, if we don't kind of have a plan for them at least, it could like materialise in something like someone taking over the account and then like responding, and like, look, that would just cause a whole bunch of other kind of I guess more emotions to kind of be poured out again from the family, going, oh, what, I've got to deal with this now as well. And like I think I guess most people just don't like having those surprises, like going, oh wow, we found this as well, or
right. And that's another thing I'm thinking. Like, I mean, you took a pretty big burden to take that on yourself. Somebody may say, well, let's have a third party do that, because so they can say, well, you find out what you need to find out about this specific topic, then let the memory be what the memory is.
What the memory is. And look, there's probably a business opportunity in there somewhere, right?
Oh yeah. I can see lawyers right now like ping.
Can you go ping? And look, I think, I guess based on my career journey and like as like an IT professional, I've had to do a number of, I guess, more investigations against like typical kind of HR type of I guess issues, or like you're looking for insiders with an organisation. So it's quite a typical activity that an IT person does, and like we already have to compartmentalise yourself in your role. So then you're obviously keeping that confidentiality. When we're doing this in a family situation, now I was the most technical competent, and it fell to myself. Which like, look, I knew I'd be up for some challenges, and I think there's still stuff that I will never know, because we obviously wanted to just find the minimum amount that we wanted to kind of make sure we understood, and then from there it's like, well, look, let's preserve what we've got, and like, like let's just remember that person for what they are. Now, look, could we get a surprise later on? Who knows?
Well, and I remember it was on the news when I was in Ireland one time, where I think two guys brought in their neighbor who was no longer with us, but physically there, into the post office to collect the dole check.
Oh, wait! That's a movie, right?
It's a movie, but it was also real.
Was it Weekend at Bernie's back in the 80s?
Like but it was a real story. But I guess my point is, for the digital life, if somebody was collecting something from somewhere,
correct?
Maybe not just a government subsidy or payment, but from some other service or royalty or whatever. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Netflix subscription.
So even they may not want to talk to the family at that point, right? Just let that Netflix run forever.
Yeah, that's right. And it's already hard enough to kind of cancel those kind of things. So like, and look, like hopefully through that process we were able to identify as much as we know. But like even just like that kind of having an experience as a family, like yes, as you say, you could outsource that. And then I guess the real question is like, how much would you want to find out for someone else doing that for it as well? And so like, it is quite a sensitive issue within our family, going, look, we want to obviously respect that person as well. They were a great person for the family, very loved. And so like, look, it was really quite challenging and confronting just to navigate that. So again, if we can talk about it, leave clear expectations for our family to navigate that, it'll really just set up that whole process to help it be as seamless as you possibly can, even though how crappy it is as you go through it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, look, society has been changing so quickly, right? I mean, especially with all this legacy account and our online, and I think there is, on one side, I'm just thinking out loud here, is that people many are not comfortable about making plans for when they die, because you're just going to postpone that as much as you can until unfortunately you can't do anything about it. Number one. Number two, many people, I think, they're still not realizing how much of our life is actually online. So you got to get to that point where this has become the norm.
That's right. And look, I'm halfway through my life. Hopefully not even close. And I like, when I was even going through this process for myself, going, well, I've got hundreds of accounts. Now look, all of them aren't the same value of information, but you got everything from your social media, email accounts. Like, I've got infrastructure as a professional, and like, okay, well, I've got to make sure I pass those on. Like, look, if someone wants to know about my e-commerce things, yeah, sure, whatever, here's their accounts. But like, there's obviously different value and richness of information that would be either available to your family and or an adversary
exactly.
as well, and like
replicate your something,
or they grab all
your
that
digital
data
twin that you don't want to have.
Create a digital twin, or they use that against the family in some other mechanism and weaponize it,
yes.
which is quite. We see that in enterprise. People get ransomware. Like,
pretty much.
And look, I'm not trying to put suggestions to the adversaries out there, but like, look, if you're not closing off those accounts and they've got simple credentials, or we're not turning on multi-factor to help, I guess, devalue those credentials in the first place.
Somebody may find it.
Someone may find it, use them in a way that will actually brings additional harm to either those individuals or the family, or using for other forms of, I guess, fraud or similar. Obviously, banks are, particularly in Australia, have got really good checks and balances around that, and across the world, that obviously finances are very well regulated in general, and so some of those checks are pretty well in place. But like, you could open up accounts internationally and do all kind of things that could, I guess, be malicious with them. And so, like, making sure that you're also being responsible, make sure that that doesn't also play out is like another piece that you can go down a real rabbit hole. This topic is confronting as it was to go through, is multifaceted and very. You can go in very different directions and rabbit holes.
My mind is in a rabbit hole right now. Like, I'm all the way down with Alice and the White Rabbit, because I keep thinking about, and there is this, and there is that,
and look,
whoa.
It was really interesting when I was kind of thinking about this topic, and with other cyber professionals, they're like, I haven't seen this being presented at a conference, and I thought, well, I've lived through something. I've lived through something that I know would be uncomfortable for many. How about I try and talk about it? So then, look, they can go back and they can talk about it, and so on and so forth. And look, by helping that, having those conversations early. Now, look, there are some technical things we can do, like if we were trying to, I guess, help inventorize that. Yes, we've got password managers that can help. Now look, how would we structure that in a way that would enable a family to do that? Have it like an emergency access the same way you would in an enterprise. And look, whether or not that would be, say, for instance, having a master key that's kept separate offline, or you could use a physical token like a YubiKey, passkey. There's mechanics that can do it. There's also the very low tech, and just having that secret password book that you get from your stationary places that everyone jokes about and saying that's insecure, but for that purpose only, and if it's well treated, or if it's being held on behalf of in a trusted person, and so those are the kind of mechanics from a practical sense, how you maybe implement it. Now look.
Yeah, it's kind of like having that when you see in the old movies, and I'm sure in real life, when you have that, there is all the things in the surface, but then maybe this person has also the bigger safe in the bank, in the vault, with that really big key where the real secrets are, the real jewelry or whatever it is, and then eventually, is that going to be I'm thinking Harry Potter in the Green God forever, right? And or somebody's going to have access to it because it's still a family heritage and an asset, and so a lot of questions about it. Now, did you ended up solving the case?
I think we were able to close out aspects where we saw that finances were no longer, I guess, being exiting the accounts or anything like that. But I guess if there was other pieces we didn't know about them, and they were unlinked from the parts that we knew about. But yeah, like even having that kind of understanding where those bank accounts were in the first place was kind of even those bits of the challenges. And so, look, I knew the process. If we found, evidence of ongoing activity, how to report that. So within Australia, we've got the Australian Signals Directorate and the Australian CyberSecurity Centre. They've got the report cyber mechanism where we could go through report that, and then it'll be passed on to, relevant authorities, and they can take the action, kick down doors, those kind of things. And so I was really aware going, look, as I'm going through this, I'm looking for those pieces to go, well, if I need to have those, let's make sure I've got what we can to, make sure that, well, look, if it was still ongoing, that we had an ability to obviously make sure that it wasn't also happening in other people's lives. And often those kind of scam groups or similar, they're not just targeting one, they are running multiple concurrent attacks across individuals and victimizing a lot. So by at least knowing that, look, I'm glad I didn't have to go through that piece, but it could have been a reality, and was really quite mindful of how I navigated that to make sure I was really conscious on okay, well, from that's like an evidence collection, and you've got to have do what you need to in that space. Again, I'm not a digital forensics expert, but I understood that I had to preserve evidence and making sure there was no kind of odd choices around chain of custody type scenarios. So wish I would if there was, it would have been really nice if we did find something and then we go, look, that now can be investigated and so forth. But it was really a bit unclear, or we couldn't find anything else that really was suggested ongoing. So
well, I'm glad you're sharing this
thanks.
With the community. I mean, people are thinkers, of course, and you know, in cybersecurity, that's what people do. But also that if people are listening right now that are not in the cybersecurity profession, but they start thinking about what could happen, I think it opened venues, maybe business ideas too, as you mentioned, but also, you know, the way to legally start navigating this and start thinking that it's a different game nowadays. If you're in the grid, if you're on the grid, you're on the grid forever. Kinda.
Well, the takeaway for me is, it goes back to me for cyber operations. You don't wait for the breach. You don't wait for the event. You have an understanding of what might be coming, and you prepare for that. So in this case, it's an understanding for yourself. It's a conversation with your family. Here's what I want. Here's my wishes, either written or verbally. Understanding from the elders, and even if they're not elder, nothing's guaranteed, right? So what does a family want?
That's right.
So it doesn't become an issue of ethics or morals or legalities or wishes, right? It's an understood.
But you see, you're talking as a security professional. But you think this way, but Grandpa or anyone else, I think it's important that when you maybe when you subscribe to an online service, there is a legacy check for.
I think a lot of people, not everybody, clearly, but a lot of people have wills and trusts. And I'm suggesting that as part of those conversations, the technology, forget cyber. But technology
it has to come into that.
You've pretty much stolen my takeaways. It's all good.
Good thing that your conversation and your session has already happened. So we're not giving away anything.
We're producing this after your session, so no secrets
Well, Peter, thank you so much. This has been like a very eye-opening conversation for me, and I appreciate again that you're sharing it with the community.
Yeah, thank you.
And for everybody listening, this was a little bit of a different kind of conversation, but definitely something that will make you think. And as I always say, if it makes you think, we did a good job. So
we did our job anyway. Good or not.
We did our job. Peter did his job.
Peter did his job.
So
Thank you.
stay tuned. Many more conversations are going to come up from Melbourne here, and the conference, the CyberSecurity Conference 2024. Stay tuned.
Still 2024.
Still 2024.
This is amazing.
Not for that long.
We're nearly to 25. All right, thanks everybody.
Stay tuned.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Cool.